Stop my share so I can see you all and see what types of questions you have. Dr. Sleddy, I know that you think a lot about the future of sales, revenue generating activities, and sales operations. And so I also wanted to invite you to speak a little bit about your thoughts on the future of sales operations, which I know is very heavily centered around analytics.
Yeah, and one of the things that's kind of interesting is the shift from sales ops to revenue ops. And really, maybe shift is the wrong word, Dr. Greg, but as we move forward and think about how we can use technology to be more efficient and more effective in sales, what do you think about that language shift from sales ops to rev ops?
So I think about that one a lot, and I think that's one that I like to debate with everybody because to me, revenue operations has a very heavy finance component to it. So I do like RevOps, I like revenue operations, but I think we have to also consider the sales in there and making sure that if we are talking about RevOps, it still considers sales enablement because oftentimes revenue operations, revenue, frankly, is a lagging indicator. So did we sign a contract? Did we generate revenue? So I think when people use the term RevOps, they mean revenue generating operations. But when they say only RevOps, I just want to caution everybody we aren't only talking about finance here because they are lovely. They help us develop our sales, but they aren't only sales. So thanks for asking that question. That's a little bit of a hot button for me.
Thank you. Thank you. Love to get your perspective on that. And we do have a question in the chat from Dr. Singh. You mentioned a few AI tools, and I may have missed, but is there a list of AI tools for sales and marketing that you would recommend? And then the follow-up to that is, how can they be used by small businesses, paid or free? And there might need to be, if you could start us off with maybe some key tools that you'd recommend we take a look at.
Love that question, Dr. Singh, because that is another thing I like to talk about. People are like magpies with AI, something shiny and it's new, and they want to try it out and they want to use it. And if you have a salesperson who's given you a great demo, it's easy to say, that's the easy button. That will help my organization. And I generally like to recommend that people start with their platform in mind. So for some organizations, that's their CRM, their customer relationship management. For some, it's their marketing automation tool. And so making sure that whatever it is you're thinking about in terms of AI, it's scalable for your company, whether you're a company of one or a company of 1 million. Because there are so many new AI tools, a lot of companies will invest time and technology, and then that company will be purchased and it will be changed. So I always encourage people to go out onto g2.com. It's just the letter G and the number two. And I like to see, does it have a decent number of reviews? Because if it's out there on G2 and it doesn't have many reviews, I'll play with it, but it might not be scalable and I may not want to roll it out to my whole organization. So, really, Dr. Singh, such a great question to say, how do I know where to go when there's so much stuff out there? And I would say here, think about your playground, your sandbox. Where do you want to test things out? But then before you roll it out to the whole organization, think about its scalability when you're thinking about, your business operations. I do like there's an AI for that because I like playing with and breaking things. But what we're seeing now is the big giants who are out there, your Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho, they're adding AI in small components inside of their own platforms, and they're buying up the really good tools and bringing them in. So once you've identified, hey, our biggest issue is with prospecting, or our biggest issue is with conversion, that's a good place to start on G2 to say, what's out there that fulfills it and has some sort of social proof that it's worked for people like me. So I do teach a class called Innovation and Technology in Sales and Marketing at Point Park. And one of the things that I have the students do is a G2 evaluation on two different competing marketing automation systems. So I have them go through and say, if I'm looking at MailChimp versus Constant Contact, what are the things that people are saying in terms of social proof so that they learn about procurement? Because I think our students need to know that type of thing so they don't just run out and buy something that costs a lot of money and a lot of implementation time and then, something happens to that company.
And I think Dr. Singh may have given us a suggestion for a future workshop when he asks about a session on training us on how to use AI sales tools. So definitely something to think about because there are so many different tools out there, as you've mentioned. And there are also tools that maybe aren't designed specifically for sales that are still incredibly helpful in a sales environment. So looking at, some of those key tools and how they might be utilized. In fact, that's a great way to explore things within a classroom. So I love the activity example that you shared. And also, something for us to think about in terms of, for all of us to think about in terms of, use of AI tools. Sometimes the AI isn't, may not be designed for a specific application, but it may still have application in that particular area.
I love that so much, allowing our students to think about how to expand beyond what I think this tool is meant for is pretty critical too, because if our students are going to work at a smaller organization or a nonprofit, where you have to make do with more with less, thinking about what are the capacities of these different tools in our tech stack and how can we take advantage of them is a really critical skill to give our students. So, oftentimes I will give a case study and say, think about this small nonprofit. Yeah, we are in. Doreen and I are in Pittsburgh, which has got a very heavy amount of nonprofit organizations. So the chances they'll go work at one for their first job are pretty high. So, imagine that you are the director of marketing at the Greater Pittsburgh Food Bank. And in your tech stack already, you have Salesforce and you have HubSpot, and then you've got NetSuite on the finance side. But here's a case that we're bringing to you. And so we generally will say, imagine that US Steel has reached out and said to you, we want to send 100 volunteers on a Friday. Great help, but how do we manage that within the tools that we already have? So allowing them to think through best case using our current technology is a great way to get them thinking about exactly what we're talking about. How do you add additional time and space to generate revenue or allow for operations when you've got a deficit when it comes to adding additional resources in terms of people, headcount, or more technology?
Yeah, I want to just thank Shannon for sharing that insight on the AI tools. I was also thinking this is specific to sales, but do we not have other tools for like content management and social media and those kind of things? I know this is not the topic where we can talk that, but generally people consider that more than any of those which are really paid and expensive and coming from. And I don't know how much. I tried some of these CRM tools from HubSpot for a company recently. Um, and I thought there are different tiers of pricing. And that company was a small company right here in Cary, in Pennsylvania. And that was my big question, that how these companies can use these tools when these tools are expensive or maybe super expensive. And are there some free tools, especially which these small local businesses can use? Maybe I mean, I know they might look for more of these digital media and and tools which can be used very easily for content creation, but something else. So maybe we can definitely have a separate session on how to train people on that. But thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, no, I love it. And you're asking the right question because there is a beautiful graphic that's put out there that's an eye chart called the MarTech landscape and really there are over 5,000 tool categories, I think. So, you've got ones that are call assists that will automatically call people for you. You've got content management systems, you've got social media schedulers, and a lot of time smaller organizations will say what is free and what is helpful for me at cost so that I can find the best tools to do the most with less. And a lot of times, what happens to these smaller organizations is they buy a lot of small point systems. So there's no centralized platform. And even for a small organization, that task switching takes some toll on our brain. And so when you pull yourself out of a content management system and into a social media scheduler, your brain has to switch those tasks. And so task splitting is one of the things that I evaluate a lot to say, Is it worth you saving $5 per license fee per month to have to jump from solution to solution? And you can't get that centralized analytical view to say, now we know end to end across our buyer's journey or our seller's journey, these are the things that can help us. So you're exactly right. Doing that cost benefit analysis is critical, but I think it's also important for us to say, what's the impact on the human? Because the humans, contrary to some belief, are becoming even more important in the sales process because what they can add is so critical for our prospects and customers.
I think that's such a key point to bring up. And when we think about all of this and these shifts with AI, it's really kind of forcing us to think about and to rethink the support that we need, whether it's for our sales teams, our marketing teams, within our tech stack. But we really have to look at how that support is changing, right? So technology is evolving, our teams are evolving, changes in how customers want to be contacted and sold to. All of that's going to require upskilling and reskilling and really rethinking what we're doing, both through sales operations and in other aspects of our firms.
It's so true. We have to be cognizant at all times that we now have 5 generations in the workforce. And so when we're thinking about our solutions, we have to think about how we can not only upskill, but reskill. What you said, Doreen, is really critical because sometimes we may have a younger gen in the workforce who says, why don't we automate all of it? Why don't we put it all in technology? And we may have such a specialized piece of equipment that it requires some tribal knowledge. So being able to evaluate, where do we let technology take over and where are the people still so critical? That is going to take something that really requires evaluation because you can't wholesale throw technology at a problem. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here on a Saturday talking about this topic.
Right, right. It's really important to think about selection and integration of technology being strategic. Where is it going to provide true benefit? Where is it going to add value to your processes? So, and also recognizing that with the multiple generations in our workplaces, that we have to be strategic in how we roll out and ultimately implement that technology, because there are some who may require more training and support than others. And I go back to another area where I know you have some expertise, Dr. Greg, is in change management. We really have to think about as we're, implementing technology, what's our change process and uh, how can we more effectively work through that process so that we get higher adoption rates?
So, this is what I did my dissertation on is technology user adoption because in so many organizations, they spend time and money rolling out something that then nobody uses. And change management is often a line item that is really easy to cross out. No, I don't want to spend $20,000 on training. Okay, then you just spent $3 million on a technology implementation for naught because you can build the most beautiful system if people won't use it. There's no point. And so thinking about change management from the beginning is really critical. And one thing we know is that humans, they want to take the path of least resistance. They don't want to work harder. They want to work smarter all of the time. And so we have to encourage them from the very beginning by letting them know this is how changing the way you already do things, where you're really comfy, is going to come into a great result for you. And so again, beginning with the beginning in mind for change management is critical. And we know all of the organizational research that was done in the 60s still are seminal works today for a reason, right? When we think about all the change management theories that have been around for decades, there's a reason. Humans still are going to act the way that humans act. And that is, Doreen, if you tell me I have to drive to Point Park University a different way, I'm just not going to do it. We see it all the time. In London, for example, when they have tube strikes, people will find better ways to get to work. They'll bike, they'll share rides with coworkers. They still, once the tube comes back, will take their same way into King's Cross Station. It's just the way we are. And so recognizing that and working it into your technology is really a critical imperative.
Thanks so much, because I think that is an important point to highlight. So let's all make sure that we are thinking about change management as we're looking at any kind of new technology adoption. That's a critical piece of it. We do have one more question in the chat, and then I think it will be a time for us to start to wrap up our discussion today. Uh, G2, you mentioned G2.com as that review site for AI technology. Is that similar to Google reviews?
Oh, that's a really good question. It is something that is simple enough that even when I teach the tech and innovation class, async, the students really understand it. So I'll show you, pretty quickly. You can be logged in or not, and you can say, I want to look at a sales enablement tool. And, it will show you here's some high products, or you can look across. Hey, here's what sales enablement looks like. Here's what other people who are using it have said. This is the number of reviews that they have. And so the way that I have students do it is I have them pick a topic. And you talked about content management and social media scheduling. Great one. So go into G2, find at least two social media schedulers and compare them pros and cons on cost, ease of use, change management, the way that it can tie into your platform. And, it's really that simple, but it's just so standard that many people know to use G2 to go in and leave reviews. And generally, if I have a customer who says, I want to use this tool and it's under a 4.0 on G2, it's a no-go. So Dr. Singh, I use it the same way that I use Yelp to choose restaurants or Google to choose a new hairdresser. It's really that simple. I love it that much.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. Greg. This has been fantastic. And we have certainly elevated our experience with sales ops through the discussion today. You gave us a lot of important things to think about as we're focused on driving revenue in a very strategic and effective way. I noticed that Dr. Greg has put in the chat the link to the worksheets from the Sales Ops Design Shop book. So that's available free to anyone on this call. You're welcome to use that link to get access to those. And if there are additional questions related to sales ops, can we share your email address with
Oh
those
my goodness.
participating in this IATM Insight session?
Please, I would love for anybody to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me. It's Shannon at shannongreg.com. My first name has three N's, my last name has three G's. If those two letters didn't exist, I wouldn't have a name. Please feel free to email me.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again to everyone for attending this IATM Insights session. Watch for additional announcements on LinkedIn regarding some of the upcoming sessions where we'll have additional training and experts here to help you build your skills and your expertise. Once again, thank you to Dr. Shannon Gregg for this insightful session on sales ops.